Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. This is a podcast for everyone because guess what? We all have emotions and we all have anger. We all have determined whether anger is good or bad in a lot of ways. And let me tell you something. There are different types of anger. And often anger can help you find healing and find your voice. So we want to deconstruct anger today. The different types of anger. How do you move through it and get to the other side? How do you sit with it and befriend it and get curious about it? And my guest today really breaks it down. This is one of the best episodes I've done on anger. And I hope you'll listen to the whole episode because I think you'll find a lot of value in it. Because once we learn to process anger, it's life-changing and life-giving. So let me introduce you to my guest today. Brownwyn is a licensed psychotherapist and anger expert. Her podcast is Angry at the Right Things. And I really think you're going to look at anger in a different way, which is why I love doing this podcast. I love exploring topics that have been around for a lifetime and looking at them with a different lens, exploring it in a deeper way to expand and grow you. So I hope this episode does that for you. I also recommend grabbing the journal. That's free. If you've listened to this any length of time, you know I love the journal, and it's available at kristendboyce.com/free resources. We'll also link it in the show notes. And it's a companion for this podcast to walk you through all that you're learning. Well, not everything, but it will help you grow, evolve, and continue the path towards freedom and healing. The more we can sit with ourselves, stop looking outside for validation, look within to find the essence of who you are, the freer you're going to be. So I invite you to take a notebook out if you have it available. Start jotting down key ideas that speak to you. Maybe you're hearing something differently for the first time. I highly recommend really sitting with this episode. Share it with family members, maybe your partner, maybe a best friend, someone that's also in therapy or on a growth journey that you want to talk about this with, because you all have ideas about anger. And maybe you had a parent who had rage or very reactive anger. Maybe you weren't allowed to have anger at all, so you've repressed it and suppressed it. Maybe you've associated anger with negativity. Whatever it is, this is your time to step in to a new pathway of understanding of the function of anger. So here's my conversation with Brownwyn. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I am so grateful you're here to talk about this very important subject on anger because we all have it. It's not something that one or two of us have. We all universally have this emotion. And it's one that's really important that sometimes we vilify, and it can also lead us to a really helpful place. It can be a navigator. So Brownwyn, welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that you're introducing anger, that we all have it. Thank you. So often we think of angry people, those hotheads. I'm not an angry. I've actually had a client, you and I are both therapists. I've had a client who said at the outset, "Oh, I'm not an angry person." And I'm like, "Well, are you human?" Because we all have anger, right? And so we really need to unpack healthy anger versus what I call reactive anger, which is not healthy and gets the bad rap that kind of like derails all of us from anger, seeing its goodness as inherent safety and what it's there for. So yeah, thank you for leading the way already.
Yes. Tell us about you, because I love that you're a fellow therapist. I love my fellow therapists. I just have to say that out of the gate. Like, I have a heart for all of us and what we do. So thank you for the work you're doing. But tell us about you. And then how did you really start honing in on anger and really making that a point of this is going to be a central point of my work?
I did not go looking for anger to be my focus. I didn't go looking to be a therapist, actually. So I'll back up and tell that story really briefly. I myself fell into a very, very profound depressive episode. I already had a master's degree in nutrition. That was my career. I didn't want to go back to school. I was 39, 40. This is about 16 years ago. Yeah. So I became so depressed. I was not really functioning and I became very physically sick as well. That was actually a manifestation of the depression. I was vomiting at arbitrary times. This was not intentional vomiting. This was me walking down the street and I would just throw up at times. It was humiliating while I was driving the car, throwing up into my lap. You can't stop the car on the freeway. And I also couldn't stop eating, ironically, at the same time. So I gained about 30 pounds in a couple months. So I was just losing my mind. Everyone I knew was like, you need to go to a good therapist. And I kept trying to find a good enough therapist and I couldn't find one. And I would just sit on couch after couch thinking to myself, Bronwyn, you are barely functional right now, but I still think you would make a better therapist than this person. And so part of my healing journey from that depressive episode was going back to school and becoming a therapist. Then I had another subsequent depressive episode, actually a couple years later, that lasted even longer. It wasn't as acute, but it was very, very life draining. So in short, I'll just say me connecting the dots, looking back while I'm doing therapy with my clients and kind of connecting the dots for them. Okay, so your panic attack, it kind of happened right after that thing that was actually really bad, that really should have made you angry, but you didn't seem to actually connect to your anger. You seem to suppress it or disassociate from it. And my depressive episodes, actually, now that I'm looking back, were my own disassociated anger that I did not connect with, that could have, if I had, would have saved me years of depression and even a suicide attempt. So that's kind of my passion for helping people connect with healthy anger because it can be absolutely life-saving.
That's powerful. I don't think I've heard anyone connect the dots on how their depressive episode was connected unconsciously, right, to a dissociative anger, like repressed, dissociated anger. And how empowering for you to discover that. How did you figure out that this is dissociated anger?
Yeah. So personally, my two depressive episodes. The first one started when we had just moved, my husband and I, and we had a small child. We moved and it was an hour and a half away, but it was like the other side of the moon because I knew no one. I knew not a single person. And I was so lonely. I didn't have a job. I just put my daughter in school and I just was by myself all day for, the first few days, more than that. But the first few nights I looked at my husband and I was so lonely. And I think I had tears in my eyes and I was looking at him for empathy and understanding. And the look that he showed on his face was one of just complete lack of empathy. It almost felt like a look of hatred. And we have talked about it since that he felt guilty because we moved for his job and he didn't want to feel guilty. So he withheld empathy from me in an effort to spare his own feelings. But that look for me triggered up little Brownwyn with the mom that she grew up with that never showed empathy or understanding or attunement. And I was so angry at Steve, but I didn't allow myself to feel it. In retrospect, if I had just said, you know what, Steve, I see what's going on. Like you're not empathizing with me because you don't want to feel guilt for me and how lonely I am. But I need you to just look me in the eyes and say, Bronwyn, it breaks my heart to see you suffer like this and give me a hug. And that's it. That's all you need to do. It's not rocket science. It's not going to cost you a thing. And if I had had that assertiveness and those assertive speech that we have, that comes from our anger. We can't have boundaries. We can't have natural assertiveness. We can't bring accountability without the feeling of anger in our body. But I just disassociated from it. I'm like, I don't know why he's not giving this to me. It could have saved us both, really. The second depressive episode I fell into was my internship, actually, when I first started my hours. I was just a trainee. And the supervisor, who was also the clinical director, he wanted me to see a client for my a couple for my very first client ever. And I was like, I can't see a couple. I'm not trained. I don't know how to do a couple. I'm not ready. And he's like, you're going to see a couple. And I didn't allow myself to connect to my anger there. which would have looked like, you know what, Dave? I don't think this is a good fit. I think I'm going to find another center to intern at because you're already not listening to me right now. And this is really important. It wouldn't have meant me erupting in anger. It would have meant me just having a boundary and saying, thank you for letting me know early on that we're not a good fit working together. But I didn't do that. I stayed. And so when we don't connect to our anger, we end up betraying ourselves. And that's what I did there. That's what I did with my husband. We betray ourselves and then our whole body gets sick. So we get insomnia, or I got physically sick, the vomiting, we get depression, we get even autoimmune disorders are now connected with all of this. We get migraines, we get digestive disorders. So all of these somatic symptoms come from us disassociating from our anger and then betraying ourselves.
This is so powerful for people to hear. Let's say, how did you know it was anger? Because a lot of people can't even recognize what anger feels like. They've dissociated so much that they're like, they're afraid they're going to go into a rage.
Yeah.
Or they're afraid what they're going to get stuck in it. So
yeah,
or they're going to unleash at people. How do we know, one, it's anger? You work through the fear of kind of being stuck in it.
Yeah. So I will say the first response is we talk ourselves out of it, which is up here in our prefrontal cortex, where I believe our adult self lives and our inner child lives in our body. And so we talk ourselves, we dissociate into our heads. That's what humans do so well. And so we have to stop doing that. We have to say, you know what? I'm not going to dissociate into my head right now. I'm not going to talk myself out. I'm just going to allow myself to feel my body. Feelings are not right or wrong. They are not good or bad. We don't judge feelings. We can judge our actions. Why would you judge a feeling? It's involuntary and it's actually there for a reason. It's there to give me wisdom and I can choose how to proceed. So if we can kind of do psycho ed on ourselves, I'm not going to talk myself out of this. I'm going to feel my body. Usually anger shows up, not always, but in the chest is a very common place. People also seem to feel it in their shoulders a lot. I notice like their shoulders want to rise up. Sometimes they feel it in their hands, arms, like they want to fight. And if we feel that, we can just say to ourselves, you know, okay, anger, I feel you. Thank you. Thank you for connecting and communicating to me. What would you like for me to do right now? What is the message? Oh, you want me to have a boundary with this person. You want me to say, hey, Kristen, we said we meet at 9 and it's 9:15 and this is like the third time this has happened. And we learn how to be an adult. And that's how we integrate. We connect our adult self with our child self and we come to life, really.
Now, what do you say for people that are afraid they're going to get stuck in it? Like, I'm going to go into a rage. I'm going to say something that I'm going to regret. Like, they associate anger with rage. Maybe that's the...
Yeah.
I have clients who are like, ooh, they have a negative association with it. Maybe a parent was raged or...
I think we do associate it with rage, but I think kind of even the greater story there is we associate it with being abandoned by others. So whether we think we're going to say something we regret or not, I think we associate with abandonment because I think most of us, before we have explicit memory, probably during the terrible twos, 1.5 to 3 years old, when we were differentiating, we're going through that differentiation stage from our parents, we said, no, I do it, mine. And maybe mom gave us a look like, you do not do that. Or maybe we got silent treatment. Maybe we got shamed and we associate it with, oh, I'm going to be rejected by my attachment figure. I can't afford to be without my attachment figure. I will literally die. I'm just a dependent young child. And so I think we all have a template somewhere underneath all that that's still very much alive and well, still telling us, no, if you show anger, you'll be alone. And the truth is, you will, but the people who will leave you are the toxic ones. And the safe people will hear you and listen and say, okay, tell me more, help me understand. And we can also trust ourselves to learn how to channel that anger out in healthy ways. So it's also about us trusting ourselves.
This connection to anger is really connected to fear of abandonment and being alone.
Yes.
How do we work through that? So if someone says, I'm scared. I'm scared that, yes, those healthy people will stay, but those unhealthy people will go. But I have something inside my body that says, don't do that. How do you people work through that?
So this is kind of why I have my podcast. So it's called Angry at the Right Things. I don't mean to shamelessly promote it, but I do have what I call integration exercises where I lead listeners through. This is what I do with my clients. And I want to get it out to the public that we can all do this for ourselves as well as other therapists to use. Because I was trained in EMDR. I actually came up with this integration exercise. It's so much faster and cleaner and simpler, and it is powerful. And I do it on myself. It takes a few minutes, literally. And I have done it with my husband, with my daughter. I have clients who do it on themselves now at random times, and they will do it on their spouses and with people in their lives too. So, all that to say, we integrate. That is our adult self connecting with our child self to unlearn that myth that anger is going to allow us to suffer needlessly by being rejected or abandoned, and to learn that, you know what, little Bronwyn, adult Bronwyn is never going to abandon you. I'm always going to be here. And I'm sorry I've abandoned you in the past. I'm sorry I have allowed you to be so alone and so desperate, but I'm not going to do that anymore because now you're my priority. And now that you have me, now that we have each other, anyone who is fortunate enough to be in our lives is a bonus now. They're just a bonus because we are whole together. And so that's just a little window of what that is. But once we can start integrating healing and becoming whole ourselves, we're like, oh, I don't actually need this person to like me. I don't really care.
Which is freedom. Which is freedom.
Which is freedom.
That
That's
is
right.
like where you get to the other side. I love inner child work. We will link that episode. Do you have a specific episode that you're doing the integration?
I do them on quite a few. Probably every third episode, I'll do one. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because we'll link maybe that in the show notes. So if someone is interested in that. Let's talk about anger as somebody that may be stuck in anger. Like they're angry and that's their go-to emotion.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that is what we call the hotheads, the angry people that get all the sensationalism. Those people, what I call reactive anger, it's not the healthy anger, which I believe is usually at a parent that they have refused to do the work on, to own, to admit, and to process. And so that spring of anger is just kind of erupting at everyone around them. And it's so unfair. And, we all do this to some extent. So, for example, during the time I didn't have that boundary with the supervisor at the clinic where I was working, I had anger with him and I was dissociating from it. It was leaking out on my daughter. And that's not fair. And that's what anger does. If we're not responsible with our anger with the source of the anger, it will leak out. And so someone who is like an angry person, so to speak, they have not dealt with the source, the true source. They're in denial about that. And so it's leaking out everywhere they go.
I like this distinction between reactive anger and healthy anger. Let's talk about the two and how to define each of those.
Reactive anger also I see as kind of like a tell. So let's say I'm working with a client and I'm reflecting like, wow, it sounds like when your mom said that wasn't okay. Or maybe I'll say something to the client like, did you think about how that might have felt when you said that? And then their reactive anger shows up. To me, that's a tell that they know it's true. That's how I know we're getting to some place that they think is true, but they're in denial of it. So when we have someone who has reactive anger in our life, it's almost like that Shakespeare quote, like, me thinketh thou protest too much. It's like, wow. So you're saying, no, that's not true, but you're so angry right now. It feels like we're getting really close to something that you really don't want to admit is true, right? Does that make sense to you?
Perfect sense. Because you're getting closer to the truth. Like there's and it could be tapping into shame. Would you say that? Like someone's shame?
Yeah,
could be
absolutely tapping into shame. Always. Denial is always around shame. I don't think we have denial unless there's shame there. Yeah.
So you could see that reactive anger as, we're hitting someone's shame. Could it be guilt too, or just shame?
Yeah. Sometimes go to great lengths to distinguish between guilt and shame. And I actually see a lot of overlap with my clients and then just people. I'm not sure they're as distinct as we make them out to be. But yes, shame, guilt, things people don't want to admit, they will get really angry, reactively angry about.
How about if they feel like you're judging or mislabeling them? Let's say someone's like, "You did this," and you're like, "I didn't do that."
For me personally, that never makes me reactively angry because I know I didn't do it, right? But if you're naming something that I kind of know that I did, I'm going to be like, that's kind of what I think
So you still
happens.
connect it to truth. Like
I do.
there's still a truth there that you don't wanna connect to, and so
Yes.
that's reactive anger.
That's reactive anger, which is not healthy anger. So going back to the shame piece or the toxic guilt, whatever, shame I see not as an emotion, but a feeling. And here's the difference in my book. Most of the word emotion is the word motion. And I think emotions are there to move us in a healthy, productive way. So that's what anger does and all the emotions. But shame doesn't move humans. It just makes us stuck. It actually debilitates us. We don't move at all. And the other thing is, humans are born into the world with the whole gamut of emotions, but there's no shame. Shame is not native to humans. It comes from other humans, mainly our attachment figures, our primary caregivers that say, no, Kristen, that's not okay when you have a boundary with mommy, right? And then there's shame. So it's not native, it's not natural. And I believe shame is a liar because shame says you made a mistake. It says you are a mistake. It's always kind of distorting things. So shame lies to us. When we have shame, we can't do the really beautiful human thing, which is to learn from the mistake. Because I always say, you know what humans do best? They make lots of mistakes. And the healthy humans learn from those mistakes. They learn. But when we have shame, we don't learn because we can't admit we made the mistake because that would mean we are a mistake. So we go into denial and we never learn. And so people who have the most shame actually are kind of like, it's like they have this tunnel vision. They're blind to so much because that shame just darkens kind of our perspective of others, ourselves. And they can be very smart in like one or two ways, but then they're blind to a lot of things that other people are like, how do you see that?
I think that's a good way to put it.
Mhm.
Developmentally, what age would you put that gets kind of stuck, that shame? Would you put it at 2 or would you put it
Yeah, I would. I would put it at two because I think the people with the most shame, the most toxic people, seem like they have that arrested development where they're just toddlers inside of adult bodies.
makes sense? Okay,
Mhm.
talk to us about healthy anger and the difference between the 2.
Yes. So healthy anger is basically like a light on the dashboard of the car saying, hey, something's off. Check under the hood so we can bring this to resolution. And the objective there isn't to defend or deny, it's not to cover or hide. The objective there is to go, wait, you're asking me to see a couple and I've never been trained and I've never even seen in an individual. And yeah, something's off. I need to bring this to resolution. I need to figure this out. I need to have a boundary or find a different place to work or just say, what? Are you kidding? Or, hey, that's not okay. And so that's really the objective there.
And so to speak into it by advocating for yourself in a sense. I mean,
Yeah. Or someone else. There's an injustice. Yeah.
okay. And
Mhm.
so, how do you develop the muscle for those folks that might have been have dissociative anger to start connecting your body sensations? How do
Yeah.
they start connecting to it? Like, what do you recommend? You have these exercises on your
Yeah.
which we can totally link to. What other things can people do?
Well, I mean, honestly, we could talk about what they could do, but again, we're speaking to the head. I think really the integration just to say to themselves in that moment, like, hey, little Kristen, it's okay to feel angry. It is okay. I'm right here and I'm not going to bounce. And you've got me. Even if this other person rejects us, I am pleased with you. You've got my approval. Even though they might disapprove, you've got my approval. And so just integrating even in that moment is very powerful, just constantly coming back to us and saying, let's be true to ourselves right here. You have my permission. Let's feel this anger and let's see it as something to keep us safe and make us be true to ourselves. And that's not selfish because a lot of us, if we're religious, like that seems like selfish, being true to myself. Maybe we were taught that. But really what it does is it allows us to flourish. And a human who flourishes is like a tree that flourishes, where it creates shade and habitat for thousands of creatures, including humans, even food. And so one human who is flourishing changes the whole world.
I love this. I love this because I want people to hear how it can change your life. Like you
Yeah.
and your story, and then you realized, oh, this is dissociative anger, and I need to have a voice for myself, integrate
Yeah.
my little girl self, my inner child self, and start speaking up for myself too. What I heard you say is this is a big part of the work, is in some instances where you're trying to advocate for yourself. Is that part of this journey? Is
Absolutely. And along that lines, I think a big part of the integration that I do, the exercises, is dislodging the shame that we have. Because shame, it kind of exiles us from ourselves. So I'll give you an example. About 4 years ago, I had a lot of shame. I wasn't aware of it, but I did. And about 4 years ago, I was kind of just processing between my sessions with these clients and seeing their shame. I went for a run and I was at a stoplight. And for some reason, I just closed my eyes and I pictured my 10-year-old self sitting at the dining room table where my dad he would shame me every night. He would just disparage me at the dining room table, mock me. And I pictured my adult self going to little 10-year-old Brownwyn and saying, here, Brownwyn, we're going to put all the shame you feel in this big cardboard box. And we're going to give it back to our dad. And we're going to say, here you go, Dad. This is actually yours. I always thought it was mine, but I'm realizing it always was yours. And we're going to return to owner. And this is yours. And do with it what you will. But it's not mine. And from that day on, something in me shifted so profoundly where it was like I kind of came into myself. And I believe that is actually what happens when we feel shame in our gut, usually. That's where we feel shame. And then the guilt that we're talking about too often shows up in the gut. And when we can dislodge that shame that, again, is a liar that doesn't belong to us, we come into our core, which I believe is in our gut. And we start trusting ourselves. We trust our gut. And it's like we're healing that relationship with ourselves. And after that, I remember there was someone in my life who tried to shame me intentionally. When the door was closed, the minute it was closed, he just devalued me. He went on a litany of all these things that he had these problems with, which really weren't true. And in the past, I know I would have sat through there and just gone, oh God, I suck. I would have listened to him. I would have taken it in. But this time I sat there and I'm like, what is he talking about? And then I thought, oh, I know what he's doing. He's trying to give me this shame and I'm not going to let him. And I had this invisible force field, which is my anger, that just was like shame proof. Nope, you can't penetrate. And I just looked at him and I said, I know what you're doing and it's not true and it's not going to work on me. Again, that was my anger at work. I wasn't exploding. I was just saying, this doesn't work. And it didn't work. And he went away with the shame, not me.
I have never heard someone put it like this. And this is why I love doing this podcast, because I'm like, this is wisdom for, I think that example of you giving back the shame in the box to your dad.
Yeah.
You realizing this isn't mine. And that's a big distinguishing, that was a big, I think, like you said, shift. Like, oh,
Big.
this isn't my shame. This is your shame that I've carried. And now I'm going to give it back.
Yes.
And then that led you for a more empowering, then you could see when that same pattern was happening with other people.
Yes.
It sounds like you were able to kind of connect, oh, I know what's happening here. I'm not going to take on this shame because it's not true. That's deep work. To get to that point.
Right. And so that's what I also incorporate in those integration exercises. I have our adult self do that with our child self and give it back. It's usually to the parent, which doesn't mean our parent was all bad, but we do get shame. So shame is like the natural residue that comes from feeling unseen, feeling neglected, invisible, or outwardly rejected or abandoned in any way. It's just the residue that comes from that. And when we give it back in our imagination to the parent, it frees us. And again, we start trusting ourselves. We trust our gut. And it all becomes more natural. This whole attuning to ourselves, trusting our anger, it just kind of becomes more natural after that.
There's like a flow to it. Sometimes I see with clients is they're so afraid to acknowledge the truth about their parent. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
They're so afraid again, abandonment, loneliness, whatever they're afraid of with their parent, if I acknowledge the truth about how they functioned, then I'm not going to have a relationship with them. Like they're really afraid to acknowledge that. Talk about that some.
Yeah. Well, I will say as a parent, good luck any parent not producing shame in your child. Like you are going to mess up your kid. There's just no way to go around that. So we first have to live in reality that even the best quote parent is going to hurt us unwittingly. And then there's also the really toxic parent. And I find that people naturally want to protect the more toxic parent. They want to be in denial about those more than the more healthy parents, actually. So there's a lot of denial. Yeah, it's almost like if we see the evil in the parent, then we have to own the evil in us or something. I think it reflects on us in some way.
Or I'm afraid I'm like that parent, right? I'm afraid.
Which, you know what? I was like my evil parents. I was. And I had to do not a lot, I had to do some serious apologizing to my daughter and owning it. So I'll just tell you the story with my daughter. This is so cool. Well, the first part's not cool. So back 16 years ago, when I fell into that major depressive episode and then the subsequent one, I lost myself. And so my daughter was 5 at the time. She felt so abandoned emotionally by me because guess what? She was. When you have a mom who's that depressed, it's like she's there in body, but I wasn't there, right? It wasn't really me there anymore. And she took it personally, as all children do, because children have zero objectivity to say, hey, my mom is depressed. No, they can't do that. They say, suddenly I don't matter. And so I must not be enough. And then that creates the shame. That's what we all do as children. That's just what we do. And so that's shame. And so I kind of connected the dots just a few years ago with why our relationship was never the same after that. It was never the same. And it went from bad to worse, actually, for 14 years. And so I wrote her a letter called Dear 5-Year-Old Edie, where I just named the very beginning. And I said, I need you to see that when you were rejected by me, that was 100% a me problem. And that was 0% a you problem. And so I need you to know that I'm the shameful one there, not you. And you can put all your shame in a box and give it back to me. And as soon as I did that, our relationship really healed. I mean, really took off. And the other thing that happened was she had chronic, almost daily headaches and stomach aches since that time for 14 years. They stopped. They just ceased after 14 years. And her anxiety completely ameliorated that she had for 14 years.
Wow. That's powerful.
That's what shame can do. And that's what us dislodging shame can do. That's how powerful it is.
Let's talk about how difficult it is for people to move through the denial, to acknowledge their wounds, their contributions, however you want to frame it. How do people get to that point where they can own it? Radical ownership, because I believe in radical ownership, because that's the way to freedom. I believe that.
Yes, I agree. Living in reality.
Living in reality and taking responsibility. I believe it's the path. It really is the path to healing and freedom. How do you help people move through the denial of it because of the shame? Like you've mentioned, you've talked a little bit, but that seems to be a big, powerful thing.
Yeah. So I'll give you another example of what I did more recently. So shame, when we are triggered or what we call activated in the present, I believe that will lead us back to an imprinting memory for shame, where we can do that integration work. So a few years ago, I got in a fight with my daughter, Edie. I was processing it about an hour later when I was calmed down by myself. I just sat in this chair and I said, what just happened? And I was reflecting on it. And I was reflecting on when I felt rejected by her. And I closed my eyes and I just let myself feel that in my body. And it showed up in my gut. And I just kept my eyes closed. And what we do is as we feel that sensation in our body, we close our eyes and we let our mind just kind of float back to the earliest time we felt that same sensation. And it took me right back to when I was 3 and how I felt so rejected by my mother during that time. And I was able to do that integration exercise. Just little Brownwyn, I need you to see that you're not the problem. I know you feel shame because mom isn't making eye contact with you. She's not listening to you. But I need you to see that she's the problem. And we're going to put all this shame in the box. We're going to give it back to her. And so as I did that, I could undo that, dislodge that shame that got imprinted in that particular memory. And so we will all have multiple memories. So that one was with my dad, that earlier one. This one was with my mom. There might be some other memories with either a parent or maybe with a bully as a kid, where we just give back the shame, we integrate, and I say to little Brownwyn, I see you and you matter to me. Maybe you didn't matter to your mom, but you matter to me. And I need you to see that I am so sorry that I've left you alone for so long and to believe that you didn't matter, but you are precious to me. And now we're going to feel our feelings together from here on out, because what's shareable is bearable. And so whenever you feel anger, it won't be just you feeling it. We're going to feel it together. We're going to put it to use together, and we're going to meet our needs from here on out. And so as we do that for ourselves, we can dislodge that shame. We can live in reality, because shame is the only thing that's defending against reality.
Oh, that's powerful. Shame is the only thing defending against reality.
Mm-hmm.
We'll need to understand that, like how big that is.
And shame's a liar. If you think it's true, you will never be able to be free.
Oh, I agree 100%. 100%. What if someone says, well, somehow they're hearing I need to confront a parent, or if I'm angry at a parent and I didn't really connect the dots on that, you don't necessarily have to confront a parent, right? That's
not
what you're saying. So I want to make sure we're clear, like someone's not, oh, well, then I need to deal this with my parent. No, you can deal with it without having to confront your parent.
In fact, I would say in most cases, it would be counterproductive to ever confront the parent. And, a lot of us, our parents are deceased anyway. But yeah, the good news is, no, you don't need to do anything. So how we dislodge our stagnant anger that is kind of haunting us, that's hanging out in our bodies, is we ground ourselves. We ground it by putting it into words. So we can write a fantasy letter to that parent. We can just say it in real time. I do that with my clients in our sessions. I'll say, so you're feeling it in your chest. What does your chest want to say in fantasy right now? Raw and uncensored. We put it into words. And when we do so, we are literally expressing it out of our body. We are externalizing that stagnant anger that was making us depressed, that was making us anxious, that was giving us insomnia or headaches or digestive illness. We're now externalizing it into the ether. And now we're more free. We're getting more and more and more free. But no, we don't have to do anything to anyone. We don't owe anyone an explanation.
I love that. What have been the most helpful books that you've read or resources that have helped you?
Yeah, I can't think of a whole lot of books. I do love Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. I don't know if you've read that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But that's kind of her memoir of her journey. I guess I learned through other people's journeys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Is there anything we didn't cover that you felt like is important when we're talking about anger?
No, I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
I love this conversation, Bronwyn. I love it so much. Where can people find you? And we'll link to your podcast. Where are all the places? If they're like, I really like her, what she's sharing.
Yeah. So my podcast, and then I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. Oh, I have a YouTube channel. That's probably a good place. I post all my podcast videos on there. Yeah. And then I'm on Insta a little bit.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom with us. This has been a powerful conversation, and I hope it is for the listeners as well that might have heard things differently when it comes to anger and integrating our inner child work with our adult self and the liberation that comes when you sit with that and really decide, I'm going to take care of my little girl or little boy or little person inside. Really, that's the freedom on the other side.
It is life-giving. Absolutely. Thank you for allowing this conversation to happen, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.